Ever find yourself scrolling through those travel photos, those stunning sunsets over volcanic landscapes, those beaches with the black sand, and you just think, Canary Islands, gotta get me there. But, like, what happens when the glossy brochure ends and the real story begins?
Well, that's exactly where we're headed today. We're ditching those tourist traps and taking a deep dive, no pun intended, into the heart of these islands.
It's true. The Canary Islands, they really do capture the imagination, don't they?
They do. We're talking sustainability struggles, the impact of tourism, and honestly, some surprising ways these islands are shaping their future. And to guide us, we've got Canary Islands today. Now, this isn't your typical travel guide. This dives deep into the real Canary Islands, beyond those beaches and those all-inclusive resorts. It's about uncovering those hidden gems, the untold stories that really paint a complete picture.
Exactly. And one thing that really jumped out, at least from what I'm seeing, is this tourism boom the Canary Islands experienced back in 2014.
Oh, absolutely. That was a pivotal year for them.
We're talking over 4 million visitors. To put that in perspective, that's almost double the entire population of the islands themselves.
Imagine that, the sheer volume of people coming in. It really highlights how vital tourism is to their economy.
Especially after that 2009 recession hit. Talk about an economic lifeline, right?
It was. It's a fascinating case study in post-recession recovery. That surge in tourism, it pumped much-needed revenue back into the islands. But, and the guide touches on this reliance on tourism, it's a double-edged sword.
How so?
Well, take those all-inclusive deals, for example. Convenient for tourists, for sure, but they can inadvertently create this sort of bubble.
A bubble.
Yeah, tourists end up kind of isolated from the local businesses.
Yeah.
And that can actually hinder the growth of the local economy. It's ironic, isn't it?
It is. You go to experience a new place, you think you're contributing, but really...
You kind of kept separate. It's a weird dynamic.
Definitely something to think about. Speaking of experiencing a place, did you know one of the islands, La Palma, it's a designated Starlight Reserve?
I did hear about that. It's quite unique.
It's amazing. The
But
world's first to receive that recognition from UNESCO. They're really leaning into astrotourism, attracting travelers looking for something beyond, the typical beach vacation.
it's a smart move. They're capitalizing on their natural assets, creating a niche, sustainable model.
And they're not stopping there. Canary Islands Today talks about these big steps they're taking towards more sustainable practices, especially in transportation.
Now that's exciting. I'm always interested in how regions are tackling sustainability.
Get this. Gran Canaria is set to open a wind-powered train line, and soon. We're talking by 2018.
Wind-powered. That's incredible.
Right, and Tenery's got this ambitious north-south train route in the works. Talk about progress.
It does sound promising, though, and maybe this is me being a bit critical, we do have to analyze these developments. Progress is great, but who benefits most? Are these projects really for the locals? Or is it more about facilitating tourism?
It's all about finding that balance, right?
Exactly.
Ooh.
And what about the environmental cost of all this new infrastructure? These are things the guidebook really pushes us to consider.
It's true. It's like those deeper currents we were talking about earlier. Sometimes things aren't as they appear on the surface. Remember how we were discussing Repsol and those oil drilling plans?
Oh, right, off the coast of Fuerteventura and Lanzarote? That was a tense time.
They were pushing hard for it, but this book, it says a staggering 3 out of 4 residents were completely against it.
And for good reason. The potential environmental impact was a major concern.
They weren't messing around. Protests, petitions, you name it, they did it. And guess what?
They won.
They won. Repsol pulled out. It's massive. A huge win for the islands and their dedication to protecting what makes them special.
That is a victory. It just goes to show the power of public engagement, and the importance of making your voice heard.
It's pretty inspiring, honestly. But then on the other hand, you've got this controversial megaport, Grandia.
Okay. All right, and Tenerife. I'd almost forgotten about that.
It opened back in 2013, and this one actually went ahead, even with tons of opposition from environmental groups and local communities.
It was a tough one. A lot of people had genuine concerns about its impact, particularly on the ecosystem and those local fishing grounds.
It really makes you think, what factors win out when these huge decisions are being made.
Especially since it went ahead with EU funding. Makes you wonder.
It's like this constant push and pull, isn't it?
What do you mean?
Well, trying to balance economic growth with protecting the environment. So how do you find that sweet spot?
It's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Finding that balance.
Well, that's where El Hierro comes in. They're taking sustainability to a whole new level. This island is a UNESCO geopark. Did you know that?
I did not. That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
And get this, they are on a mission to become completely energy independent.
Now that's ambitious. How are they planning to do that?
They're harnessing the power of nature, solar, wind, hydro. They're not just talking about it either, they're living it. They've even got this goal to have an all-electric vehicle fleet by 2020. Imagine that, an entire island running on renewable energy.
Talk about forward thinking. That's incredible if they can pull it off. It's like stepping into the future.
It really is. And it's not just El Hierro, La Gomera, another one of the islands. It's a UNESCO biosphere reserve.
So they're also committed to conservation. It's great to see.
They are. But even with these success stories, it's a good reminder of just how fragile these ecosystems really are. Like that devastating wildfire that ripped through La Gomera's Garashone National Park back in 2012.
Oh, right. That was awful. Such a stark reminder that even the most well-protected areas are vulnerable, whether it's natural disasters or, unfortunately, sometimes even human actions.
It's true. Progress isn't always a straight line, is it?
Nope, it's messy, it's got its ups and downs. These islands, they're navigating complex challenges. And, that's something this guidebook really highlights. It doesn't shy away from the tougher realities they face.
Yeah, like what?
Well, for one, despite that tourism boom we were talking about, the poverty rate is actually surprisingly high.
Really? I wouldn't have guessed. Why is that?
It's a good question. And it brings up a really important point. While tourism can bring economic benefits, those benefits don't always reach everyone.
So even with all those tourists.
The guidebook mentions a poverty rate of 33.2%, which is way higher than mainland Spain. It's a stark contrast.
That's a huge difference. So even with all the positives of tourism, there's this.
Underlying reality that's often overlooked. It's a reminder that sustainable development, it needs to be more than just environmental. It needs to address those social and economic inequalities too.
You're right. It's about the whole picture, isn't it? It really makes you think twice about those picture-perfect images, doesn't it? Like, you see those sunny beaches, those incredible landscapes, and you don't always realize the struggles some people might be facing, even with all those tourists around.
It's easy to forget when you're caught up in the vacation mindset. But that's what's so important about this book, Canary Islands Today. It doesn't just gloss over those complexities.
You're right. It's like we were saying before about those all-inclusive vacations. They might seem like they're boosting the economy, but
Right. But they can actually create a barrier between the tourists and the local communities. Imagine, right, going to this amazing new city, experiencing a whole new culture, but you never actually leave your hotel.
you'd miss out on so much.
Exactly. You're there, but you're not really there, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's like a weird paradox. Physically, you're on these beautiful islands, but are you really engaging with the community? Are you contributing to the local economy in a meaningful way?
That's the question. And it's why this whole concept of responsible tourism is so crucial. The book really hammers that home.
So how do we do that? Be more responsible, I mean.
Well, it starts with being mindful, asking ourselves, how can I actually be a better visitor?
Okay, so what does that look like in action?
It means stepping outside that all-inclusive bubble, seeking out those local businesses, whether it's a family-run restaurant or a market where you can support local artisans, or even a guided tour led by someone who truly knows the heart of the island.
I love that. It's about those authentic experiences,
Yeah.
connecting with the place on a deeper level.
Exactly. It's about understanding that our choices, even the small ones, they have an impact. It reminds me of this concept of slow travel. Have you heard of that?
I think so, but refresh my memory.
It's about slowing down, really savoring the experience. Instead of rushing from one tourist attraction to the next, it's about taking your time, really immersing yourself in the destination.
I love that idea. It's about quality over quantity.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes a difference, not just for the traveler, but also for the people and places they visit.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, haven't we? I mean, we've talked about the economy, the environment, the impact of tourism.
It's a lot to unpack. These islands, they're facing some real challenges, but they're also resilient, They're actively trying to find solutions.
That's what I find so fascinating about them. It's like they're constantly evolving. This isn't some static destination frozen in time.
That's what makes it interesting. They're grappling with real issues, searching for that path toward a better future.
And that future, that's what we're going to dive into next. It's like we've gone beyond the postcard, We've seen those glossy images, but now we're seeing the real deal, the real Canary Islands.
And that's what's so compelling, isn't it? It challenges our perceptions. Paradise isn't always perfect.
Not even close. These islands are living proof that even in the most idyllic settings, life is messy. There are always going to be challenges, triumphs, struggles.
It's about recognizing those complexities, and I think that's what makes responsible travel even more important.
Okay, so we've talked about it a lot, but for people listening, what does that actually look like, being a responsible tourist?
It's more than just eco-friendly hotels and reducing your carbon footprint, though those things are important, of course. It's about really engaging with the place on a deeper level, understanding the impact of your choices.
Like we were saying before, supporting those local businesses, making sure our tourism benefits the people who call these islands home.
Exactly. It's about asking yourself, how can I contribute positively to this place? How can I make sure my presence here is a good thing?
I love that. It's about shifting our perspective from taking to giving.
Absolutely. Travel, at its best, should be a reciprocal exchange.
Mm.
You learn, you connect, and you leave a place better than you found it.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Canary Islands, I think that's the thought I want to leave with everyone. What does responsible travel mean to you? What kind of impact do you want to have on the places you visit?
It's a question worth pondering. And if you're looking for inspiration, I highly recommend checking out Canary Islands Today. It'll definitely give you a lot to think about.
It will. And on that note, thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time for another exploration into the realities beyond the brochures.